understanding the difference between autistic meltdowns and autistic shutdowns. Hi, I'm Brett, the Audi Boss, and on this podcast, we talk about ADHD and autism in the workplace. I'm Brett. I'm an autistic manager with ADHD. And this one is a podcast exclusive, mostly because I want to talk about my own meltdowns and shutdowns without being seen. I realize how weird that sounds. I usually record these as videos, and I take the audio and I put that as a podcast, which is probably more detailed than you actually need to know. But in this case, I really want to be able to talk a little bit more freely about this topic without necessarily being seen. And if you know enough about autism and ADHD, hopefully you can understand and relate to why that is. So I am reading from a recently updated article on EmbraceAutism.com about meltdowns and shutdowns. Now, the published article originally happened in 2018, but they updated it in July of 2025 with updated research. And I'm going to read from their article, and then I'm going to intersperse with some personal narrative about my autism shutdowns and my meltdowns, and why I found this article to be extremely helpful. So, from Embrace Autism. Meltdowns and shutdowns are common responses for autistic people, which are the result of having an accumulation of stresses with no further coping resources. They manifest uniquely for each and every single one of us. They happen when we've held it together for too long, when there's no space left inside our nervous system to keep responding. What may seem like giving up is often the nervous system protecting itself, essentially releasing stress hormones or powering down because it has no other way to respond. Here's what the research says today. Recent developments in autism research have highlighted the interconnectedness of burnout, inertia, meltdowns, and shutdowns. This is sometimes referred to collectively as the BIMS profile. BIMS. B for burnout is often the end result of cumulative stress, masking, and unmet support needs. Inertia refers to the difficulty starting or stopping tasks, especially after shutdown. Meltdowns and shutdowns are acute states of overwhelm. Meltdowns are expression, not explosion. A meltdown isn't a choice. It's an involuntary response to intense overload when our nervous system is pushed to its limit. Autistic individuals often have heightened sensitivities across sensory, emotional, and social domains. When the cumulative stress exceeds what can be managed, a meltdown becomes a natural consequence. Meltdowns may look different depending on the person. Some may cry or yell. Others pace, flap, or even lash out. Some show internalized distress with racing thoughts, panics, or overwhelming frustration. These expressions are not tantrums or attempts to manipulate. They're signals of a real struggle. Many of us express vulnerability or shame once we can regain control. These episodes are often linked to masking, the wear and tear of suppressing autistic traits until it becomes impossible to hold together internally. A meltdown may follow as those internal reserves are depleted. When meltdowns occur frequently, they can signal early stages of autistic burnout, indicating deeper chronic stress. Under the surface of a meltdown is the body in overdrive. The heart races, breathing quickens, and stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood the system. The brain's alarm center, the amygdala, takes over, while the parts responsible for regulation and reasoning go offline. This is the nervous system sounding the alarm. Too much, too fast, too loud, too hard. Studies show that autistic individuals often have stronger stress reactions and more difficulty calming back down afterward, especially when their environment is overwhelming. New research in 2025 helps explain what happens in the brain during an autistic meltdown. Scientists found that part of the brain called the insular cortex, which helps process sensory information, works differently in autistic people. This can cause them to feel constantly on the edge and more easily overwhelmed by sounds, lights, or emotions, which can build up and lead to a meltdown. Another study showed that it's now possible to predict meltdowns before they happen using wearable sensors that track stress and body signals. Now, this is me again, pausing to just reflect on what that was just about. Personally, I can fully and completely relate to that moment of holding on to my mask so tightly, so intensely. I can think about work conversations, fights with my partners, fights at work, these moments where I feel the mask slipping. And when it's gone, I just feel that surge of adrenaline, which the article so perfectly narrates. That quickened stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flooding the system. It feels like a hot, warm bath taking over inside my mind, inside my body, and then I just feel either rage or I can feel sort of an overwhelmed feeling or tears or whatever that feeling is, whatever that surge of that feeling of overwhelm is, where the mask is just completely gone. And then I find myself sometimes ranting, sometimes rambling, sometimes just sort of saying all those things in my head. And I can feel a part of ADHD getting in there and telling me, yeah, keep going, say this, say this, say this. And I can hear myself doing it. And I want to pull it back or I want to stop it and I can't. But sometimes I can pick up on that I'm doing it. And I quickly use all the tools in my disposal to get the mask back wherever it's gone, get it back on, take some deep breaths, or at the very least, get myself out of whatever the situation is that has set me off, that has triggered me, that has pushed me to that point, that has pushed me to that edge. Get out of there before I say or do anything else that could be hurtful, angry, or whatever the situation is. Of course, the part that I really relate to in this article about meltdowns is that shame spiral, that embarrassment, that frustration, like, why did I let that happen? How did I let that happen? I've got to go apologize. Now I've got to go walk that back. It's most especially embarrassing for me as a boss when I lose my cool, when I have those moments. Thankfully, now that I know about my autism, I know about my ADHD, I have more tools in my disposal. I have more tools in my toolbox where I can feel these things happening sooner. I'm more aware of them happening, and I either know to get myself out of that situation or I know to pivot or adjust or whatever I have to do. It's not always perfect, but when it does happen, and it does still happen, I still have to walk back, hat in hand, as they would say, and apologize and make up for whatever the thing was that I said or did. I had one happen earlier this year, actually, where someone who had really been just kind of coming at me, almost like a mosquito attacking me, relentlessly pushing me to sort of commit to something or say or do something that I wasn't ready to do. And I snapped. And I snapped at this person after asking them multiple times to stop. And I said something I probably shouldn't have said. I apologized, but also I had spoken to before about not doing that to me or others. Back now to the Embrace Autism blog on shutdowns. Shutdowns when the system powers down. Real quick, just a note from me before I read this. This really describes me beautifully. I am more prone to shutdowns than meltdowns. I have a friend who never masks, and when they hit their meltdowns, they have big crying explosions. But for me, because I mask so hard, I'm more prone to shutdowns than meltdowns. Embrace Autism writes, a shutdown is the nervous system's way of protecting itself by withdrawing inward when demands become too much. Unlike meltdowns, which are often visible and expressive, shutdowns may appear passive or quiet. They are no less intense or disruptive. During a shutdown, an autistic person might go mute or become unresponsive. Some describe the experience as being trapped inside their body, aware of what's happening, but unable to move or speak. Others report a temporary loss of language processing, emotional expression, or physical initiation. What researchers have described as a, quote, blue screen moment for the mind. Shutdowns are often misinterpreted as laziness, defiance, or disengagement, especially in schools or the workplace. In truth, they reflect a complete depletion of sensory, cognitive, and emotional capability. and emotional capacity. For some autistic people, shutdowns are more frequent than meltdowns, particularly among those who internalize stress or have learned to suppress outward displays of distress. Without proper recognition and support, shutdowns can accumulate into longer periods of autistic burnout. Physiological shutdowns reflect the nervous system hitting its emergency brakes. Instead of speeding up like a meltdown, the body powers down. Heart rate slows, energy drops, and everything feels muted or far away. This is part of what researchers call a freeze response, governed by the parasympathetic nervous system. It's the body's way of saying, I can't fight this, so I need to shut down until it feels safe again. Studies show that many autistic people have trouble shifting back into calm, connected state after shutdowns because of their stress systems stay on high alert longer than average. Even when someone looks still on the outside, their system is working hard to protect them from further overwhelm. Back to me again now. So much of that section, so much of that describes my shutdowns, describes more of me as I'm trying to mask than meltdowns do. About a year ago, I was in a difficult meeting with this difficult person who I try not to be in meetings with very frequently. But this is a person that as soon as I interact with them, there's just something about this person. They tend to set me off. They tend to trigger me. They do something inside of me where I really have to work harder to navigate and bounce around this person. And they had been getting very agitated. They've been getting more angry. And the more angry and agitated they got, the more calm I was trying to get. And I was trying to deliver my messaging and the things that I needed to do, but I was shutting down. I could feel myself shutting down, and I could feel myself getting sort of that wired nervous system inside of me, but I could feel myself fully powering down. And I was able to sort of come out of it after the meeting, and I had a talk with a friend and a colleague, and we sort of processed through it, but my day was spent. I couldn't bounce back. All of my energy was gone. It was wasted. All I could do was rest. All I could do was sleep. I was so distracted. I felt that buzz of that energy inside of me for the rest of the day, but it really, truly shut me down for the whole day. I couldn't function. I still had to work that day. So I tried to do the bare minimum, or I tried to find my way around that situation as best I could, but I wasn't bringing my best energy to it. What I needed to do, which I can recognize now on this side of it, was to go rest, was go relax, and go do whatever I could do to stop this cycle from happening. I needed to complete the stress cycle, which is what Dr. Megan Ananuff would say from Neurodivergent Insights. Reading back now from Embrace Autism on the section Triggers and Differences, What Leads to Overload. For many autistic people, what leads to overload isn't one dramatic event. It's the slow accumulation of stressors. Sensory overload. For someone with a hypersensitive sensory system, even small discomforts can add up fast. A fluorescent light that flickers, the background hum of a fan, layers of sound in a crowded room, a seam in a sock that won't sit right. Emotional and social stress. Social expectations, conflict, miscommunications, or the need to mask one natural communication style can generate emotional overload. Chronic invalidation, rejection, or social confusion are also key contributors. Executive dysfunction. Difficulty initiating, transitioning between or completing tasks can add significant pressure. Task paralysis and unmet expectations can trigger shame and overstimulation. Masking and camouflaging. Sustained masking, suppressing stimming, scripting speech, or mimicking neurotypical behavior requires immense cognitive effort and emotional labor. Over time, this can lead directly to burnout or trigger meltdowns and shutdowns. Embrace Autism writes about the different kinds of strategies for recovery and prevention. They start with this. Number 1, environmental modifications. Can you reduce sensory loads by adjusting lighting or noise levels? Can you create access to quiet, low-stimulation recovery spaces, sensory retreats, noise-canceling headphones, and dimmable lights? Can you advocate for remote work or modified attendance in chronically demanding environments? Number 2, communication and predictability. Is it possible to use visual schedules, timers, or pre-transition warnings to reduce cognitive strain? Establishing clear communication needs, or normalize breaks and decompression. Number 3, self-regulation and coping tools. Is it possible to support self-soothing through weighted blankets, deep pressure, movement such as rocking or walking, or the use of sensory tools? Encouraging self-knowledge of early warning signs. For example, that feeling of fogginess or avoiding interactions. And number 4, recovery-oriented frameworks. Recovery from burnout may require reducing responsibilities, extending timelines, and eliminating obligations. Again, all of this is from Embrace Autism. I will link to that in the description notes for today's episode. It's definitely, there's a lot more here that I did not get to that I think is really worth going back and reading and studying. Definitely for me, those triggers and differences of what leads to overload, the sensory overload, that hypersensitivity to sensory things, noting those small discomforts. I can feel those build up fast for me, especially if I haven't gotten enough rest or I'm still sort of building off of something else, a different overload or additional emotional or social stress. For me especially, social expectations, conflict, miscommunications, or the need to mask one's natural communication style can generate emotional overload. That's a big one for me. I think, it notes here as well, chronic invalidation or rejection or social confusion. A lot of those ones for me, they're little stressors that add a lot, but having any sort of misunderstanding or invalidation or social confusion can just set me on edge. And then, of course, executive dysfunction. Personally, for me, I struggle with transitions, any kind of transitions. Long-term transitions, big transitions, sometimes a little bit better with smaller transitions, but even those can sort of be difficult for me, especially with that inertia that we talked about in this list. And of course, sustained masking. I'm personally a high masking individual. I do script a lot. I mimic a lot of neurotypical behavior. That's just something that I do as a day in, day out type of thing. I'm masking probably 80 to 90% of my day. And that does require a lot of cognitive and emotional work as well. So that is the overall sense of the difference between autistic meltdowns and autistic shutdowns. I hope some of this has been helpful. Please be sure to check out more of my episodes, both on the AuDHD YouTube channel. I hope you can like and subscribe there. It really does help the channel grow. You can also subscribe to my new Substack. I have a free tier and coming soon a paid tier with more content. I've got a new program in the mix that I'm building about trying to unmask at work for professional reasons, so more to come on that. And be sure to check out, of course, this podcast. Please subscribe and like and comment to this podcast as well. Be sure to also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me on Instagram at AuDHD and on TikTok at Brett Whitmarsh, all one word. Thanks for listening. I hope this episode's been helpful for you today. It's been sort of different for me to sort of just talk to you directly without being on camera and having just that audio, but it's also been kind of more relaxing and a little bit more freeing for me and a little bit more loose. So I hope this episode has been helpful for you. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and follow. Let me know if you have a comment or question.